Christmas night, 1836. Magnolia Bend Plantation, Charleston, South Carolina. The Ashley River held no reflection that night. Its black water curled around the roots of Magnolia Bend, where moss hung low and quiet over the quarters. In the big house, silver caught firelight. Carols murmured through brandy-sweet air. But outside, Clara waited. She stood barefoot in frost, dress stitched with hidden seams. In one hand, the axe, clean, silent, ready. Her breath came slow. Beneath her ribs, no fear stirred. Only memory. They would call it madness. They would call it murder. But Christmas had already been hollowed of meaning. She would carve a new one in its place. The blade gleamed once beneath the moon. Then she moved. She remembered when he first came to Magnolia Bend. Spring had barely thawed the soil, and Josiah Reed stepped down from a trader's wagon with his wrists still marked in rust. Tall, quiet, younger than most, with a voice like river stone, rough, but shaped by something soft beneath. He was not born here. That mattered, because men born to the soil walked like ghosts. But Josiah looked around and raised his eyes. The first time Clara heard him laugh, it came from behind the granary. A sound sharp and short, almost startled. She had never heard a man laugh like that on this land. It didn't last, but it stayed with her. She caught herself listening for it again. Over time, they carved out silence together. Not conversation, not confessions, just moments stolen behind smokehouses, between laundry lines, under the cypress when no one watched. He called her Clara like the name was hers. Not girl, not gal, not wench. Just Clara, by autumn. His hands bore the weight of rice work. Swollen knuckles, raw fingers, shoulders that sank deeper with every sack. But he still met her behind the ice house when he could. He still smiled. She once asked him what he dreamed of. He looked at her a long time before answering. A gate, he said. One that don't lock. That was the season Master Hartwell made his promise. It was said softly, in passing, as if it cost nothing. In the spring, he told Josiah, you keep straight. I'll see papers drawn. Clara overheard it. She did not believe it, but Josiah did. And when he told her, it was with such trembling pride, she could not bring herself to crush it. Spring, he whispered in the dark. We'll go north. I'll wear a coat. You'll have a ribbon. She nodded and hated herself for doing so. Winter came like a closed fist. The mornings cracked with frost, and Clara kept her hands moving, not for warmth, but to hide the stillness inside. Josiah's name was not spoken aloud. The overseers had other things on their minds. And then one day he was gone. No farewell, no message, just gone. A girl from the field said she'd seen him dragged in chains toward the river. Another whispered a sail to the rice swamps near Georgetown, the kind of place where men died with their mouths full of mud. Clara didn't cry. Not then. She went to Hartwell's study, uncalled, uninvited. He was seated behind his desk, sharpening a quill. She stood in silence until he looked up. You said spring, she said. Hartwell stared at her, as if examining a stain. Then he chuckled. I said a lot of things. Her hands did not move. Her face did not twist. She simply turned and walked out. 2 weeks later, word reached the quarters. Josiah had tried to run. They caught him near the marsh, dragging one leg. The overseer cracked both knees with an iron bar, left him for the heat to finish. No burial, no marker. The women said he died whispering her name. Clara scrubbed the floors that morning. She folded linens. She served breakfast. Her face gave nothing, but something inside her slipped loose. Not grief. Grief had no voice here. What came instead was observation. Quiet, patient, complete. She began to note when the overseers took their rounds. Which hinges groaned. Which keys hung loose. Which locks held more rust than iron. Each fact she gathered like thread in a loom. She knew which boards creaked beneath the library door. Which barrel in the smokehouse sat hollow. Which pistol was kept above the mantel. She did not speak of Josiah again, but the axe behind the quarters, that she began to clean with a cloth dipped in vinegar and ash. The first hinge she greased was the one on the pantry door, the tin of lard used for biscuits. She dipped her fingers in it just after dawn, when the cook had stepped outside to shout at the scullery girl. The hinge drank the lard without sound. That night, the door moved like breath. Each day brought another small silence. Another creak erased. She moved without notice, apron neat, hair wrapped tight. No one suspected the quiet girl was counting spoons and mapping floorboards. But Clara knew how sound carried. She had heard lashes land across fields. She had heard screams travel through walls. So she became quieter than them all. The axe slept in its place by the woodpile. Every morning she lifted it once, not high, not swift, just a test of balance. She traced the handle with her thumb, feeling for splinters with a sliver of pumice. She sanded the grip until it fit her palm like a second skin. Then she wrapped the lower third in rag, not for comfort but control. Blood would make it slick. She learned which rooms were left unlatched after dusk, which keys the butler left behind on hooks. She stole none, just copied, one by one, in wax and clay, then traded for metal slivers from the blacksmith's scrap pile. The copy she kept hidden in the lining of her shoe. Her dress, one simple, began to change. She stitched a second layer into the skirt's folds, not for modesty but concealment. The fabric carried weight now, and the seams whispered when she walked. Beneath the hem she hid the grease rag. Above the hem she hid the blade. The pistol came next. A small flintlock Hartwell kept above his mantle. She had seen him drop powder into it with drunken pride, boasting of the duels of his youth. She touched it once while dusting, felt its weight, noted the looseness of the pin, the shape of the chamber. One night she took it, just long enough. She melted wax from the chapel's altar candles, mixing it with soot scraped from a hearth. It filled the chamber well, looked like powder but would burn without fire. She returned the pistol before the cock crowed. The bullet would misfire now, appear faulty, appear fate. She did the same with the overseer's gun, slipped into the barn when no one watched, tampered with the powder bag, then vanished like fog. When they pulled the trigger, all they'd find was ash. Clara began to rise earlier, worked later, smiled at the right times, said yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, until the words became ropes of smoke, leaving her mouth. But her eyes never changed. They no longer drifted. They fixed, measured, weighed. She watched which guards lingered near the mill, which ones drank from the sour barrel before patrol, which ones limped from old injuries. Weakness was not sin, it was invitation. She studied the sugar wheel, slow turning, damp with molasses, its base thick with rot. If someone stood just beneath the western axle, they would not be seen until too late. She marked it. She traced the path to the dock, mud slick, narrow, muffled by river frogs, perfect for silence. She noted where the shadows thickened after moonrise. In the ice house, she found a loose stone in the floor, half sunk, sharp-edged. She stepped on it hard. It shifted. Anyone running would trip. She did not move it. And behind the barn near the bales, she rigged a pile of empty barrels just high enough to tumble when jostled. A trap, not for the strong, but the fast, for the one who might run. She did not plan to chase. She planned to wait. Every night she rehearsed. In her mind first, then in breath, then in motion. When the bell rings, children go to the smokehouse. When the fire starts, the study is first. When the pistol misfires, step forward, strike, then vanish, then strike again. She found a rhythm in it, a music made of vengeance, steps between heartbeats. The courtyard bell was old iron, and used since the fever year. It hung still above the yard, rusted and brittle, but it still rang. She tested it once, under cover of storm. It sang like grief. That would be the signal. In the quarters, she told no one, but the elders began to notice the stillness around her, the way she folded linens tighter, the way she flinched at hymns. One woman said, "Child, your eyes don't blink no more." Clara didn't answer, but one girl, young, soft-voiced, often punished, looked at Clara one night by the well, said, "You dreaming something?" Clara only replied, "Not dreaming, remembering." In her pallet, beneath the straw, Clara hid a paper. It was Josiah's name. Not written, they couldn't write, but sewn. Letters shaped in thread, crude, sharp. She touched them every night like prayer. Then she waited, not for the moon, not for a sign, for the day they called holy, the one wrapped in ribbons and roast pork. Christmas. They lit the candles at 6. The parlor glowed gold and green, garlands drooping like vines across the doors. The servants polished silver that would not feed them, stirred pots that smelled of cinnamon, and hummed carols through cracked lips. The big house breathed wealth that night. Roasted duck, sweet yams, gingerbread laced with molasses. Outside, the quarters held none of it, only frost, silence, and breath cloudy in the cold. Clara moved the halls like she always had, quiet, graceful, unremarkable. The guests barely looked at her. Even Hartwell didn't speak, content to sip brandy and whisper politics to Reverend Langston by the hearth. The overseers were scattered, one at the barn with the stable hands, one patrolling the docks, two seated on the porch with pistols and pies. Everything lay as it should, until she pulled the bell. It rang once, not loud, not frantic, just once, but it cracked the air like a bone snapping. The children knew. The elders knew. They'd seen Clara gather them weeks before under the cypress. If the bell rings, go to the smokehouse. Hide. Don't come out till morning. They thought it was a drill. It wasn't. Inside the house, the guests paused. Strange wind, someone murmured. No one rose. In Hartwell's study, the fire burned low. Flames danced over ledgers, maps, and a single decanter half-drained. Clara stepped inside without knocking. The door creaked softly behind her. Hartwell turned, mouth opening. To scold or smile, she'd never know, because the axe was already moving. It struck his chest with a sound like timber meeting earth. Not once, twice. The third buried deep. He didn't scream. He didn't have time. The ledger fell from his lap. Pages fluttering like wings. Names, debts, prices. Clara lit the edge with a taper from the hearth. The flame caught, raced up the spine. Paper turned to ash beside the body. Debts and flesh erased together. She left before the flames reached the curtains. The parlor was empty now. Guests fled at the first scent of smoke. Only Reverend Langston remained, hands trembling, clutching his Bible. She passed him without a glance. He whispered, "God sees." She said nothing. Let him see. Outside, cold at her feet. Frost cracked beneath her steps. She crossed the yard like a shadow drawn by justice. First, the sugar mill. The overseer there, Weller, was bent over a crate, drunk, humming a hymn through crooked teeth. He didn't see her in the wheel's shadow. Didn't hear the soft footfall. Her axe rose. The first blow knocked him forward. The second opened his spine. Blood soaked the molasses-stained floor. She dragged him out of sight, left him beneath sacks of cane. By morning, flies would find him. Second, the barn. Jensen, wiry, nervous, always kept a pistol. It clicked as she approached. But the charge misfired. Wax and ash puffed like dust. He blinked. She stepped in. The axe found his throat. He fell against hay bales, gasping. One boot kicked, then stopped. Third, the ice house. It breathed cold like a tomb. Overseer Craddock liked to sit there, boots on barrels, pretending he was guarding gold. The stone floor was slick with meltwater. When he rose to draw, he slipped, just a crack of bone. Clara stepped forward. He tried to crawl. She brought the axe down through his shoulder, then again until he stopped twitching. She left his blood to freeze beside the blocks. Last, the doc. Mason, broad-shouldered, fast, cruel. He wasn't there. She waited, hiding behind crates. The river whispered. Then footsteps. He came down with a lantern, muttering curses. Saw her. Ran. He almost made it. His foot hit the barrels she had rigged. They rolled, cracked, collapsed. He tumbled, landed with a scream that echoed off water. The axe didn't kill him. His own leg, twisted, broken, did. She walked to him as he crawled, reached for the pistol. It misfired. Smoke and wax. He sobbed, "Why?" She raised the axe. Because steel met bone. Then silence. By the time she returned to the courtyard, The fire in the big house had spread. The roof was catching. Guests fled in carriages, dresses torn, shoes lost. No one noticed Clara slip through the kitchen door and return the axe to its place by the hearth. Smoke curled behind her. Screams drifted faintly. She walked to the smokehouse. Inside, silence, eyes wide in the dark. She found the youngest, a girl of 11, barely more than shadow. The child pointed toward the barn, trembling. He almost... Clara nodded, took her hand, pressed a scrap of paper into it. The one she'd found in Hartwell's desk weeks ago. A list of names, sales, crimes. If I fall, give this to someone who prints truth. The girl didn't answer, just nodded. Dawn was hours away, but the reckoning had begun. The first fell without a word. Weller, the drunk keeper of the mill, spent most nights swaying over vats of syrup, watching the sugar wheel turn like judgment. The stench of boiled cane clung to him. He hummed hymns off-key, swore the molasses could speak. Clara watched him for weeks. She waited in the blind arc of the wheel, breath held. When he leaned to scratch his ankle, she stepped from the dark. One blow sank into his neck. The sound was wet, deep. He gurgled, dropped his bottle, and clutched at the wound. She didn't let him speak. The second strike silenced him. Blood splattered the sacks. She dragged him behind the press, laid his hat across his chest like a burial. No alarm, no sound, just the wheel turning, as if nothing had happened. Jensen came next. He fancied himself clever, thin, fast, fingers like spiders. He checked the barns each night with a pistol loose in his belt and a song in his throat. He had eyes for girls too young and fists too quick. Clara knew he'd try to shoot first. That's why she filled the pistol's mouth with ash. He turned when he saw her, smiled, reached. The gun snapped dry. His face twisted. That moment, that flicker between confidence and fear, was all she needed. She closed the space in 3 steps. Swung low. The blade bit deep into his ribs. He screamed, staggered, clawed at her apron. She twisted the handle, yanked it free, and swung again, the second cut taking his wind, the third ending him. He dropped into hay, red spilling like seed. Clara knelt, wiped the blade on his sleeve, then stood. No one came. The third was slower. Craddock spent his nights in the ice house. Said it cleared his head. Said it preserved order. He sat on a stool when Clara entered, half asleep, boots on a crate. She didn't move fast. She let the cold do the work. As she stepped forward, his eyes opened. He rose too quick. His foot slipped. A thud, skull against stone. Blood bloomed. He groaned, tried to stand. Clara stepped over him, raised the axe, brought it down once. A clean split at the collar. He gasped. She did not wait. Steel again, until the floor held more red than frost. The air steamed with heat from his dying. She left him beneath the hook, where they once hung meat. But the fourth did not fall easy. Mason, the largest, the fastest, the cruelest. A man who once broke a boy's wrist for breathing too loud during roll call. She found him at the dock, but he wasn't alone. He heard her, turned. "What you doing, girl?" She didn't answer, just stepped forward, the axe hidden beneath her cloak. He reached for the gun at his side, but the wax held. It clicked, sputtered, failed. He cursed, turned, ran. She gave chase, not through fury, through purpose. He slipped past crates, boots pounding wood. But she knew the trap, the barrels. She stacked them just right. He hit them. They rolled. He lost footing, crashed hard. A crunch. His leg gone crooked. He tried to crawl, reached for a splintered oar. She walked him, calm, slow. He looked up, eyes wild. "Please." She raised the axe. He screamed. The dock caught his blood. Then the river carried it away. Back at the edge of the quarters, smoke rose from the study. The fire Clara started had spread, not wild, but steady. Just enough. She passed the chapel. Flames licked the shutters. The reverend was gone. 4 men lay dead. 1 master burned. And still, she was not done. She walked into the barn again, retraced her steps. checked the bodies. Weller slumped against molasses barrels. Jensen's blood soaked the hay. Craddock lay like a butchered hog. Mason, part of him already eaten by the river, but the doc felt wrong. Too quiet. She stepped onto the boards again. The moon lit the scene. The blood was there, thick, fresh, but the body was gone. Drag marks. Then the smear stopped. A moan from the reeds. Mason, still breathing, still crawling. Not far. She followed. He had made it 20 feet, face in the mud, leg twisted, arm broken. God, he rasped. Clara stepped beside him. He reached for her ankle. She stomped his wrist, then drove the axe once into the plank beside his ear. He flinched. Please, he whispered. She crouched. No more overseers. She stood again, turned, left him. The rats would finish what the blade did not. For overseers. For debts. Settled, but not forgotten. Because when the wind moved over Sugar Mill that night, it did not carry hymns. It carried the smell of rust, fire, and justice. The girl had no name on paper. Just kitchen help in Hartwell's ledger. 11, maybe 12. Too small to lift the stew pot without tilting it. Too quiet to beat for answers. Clara had seen her, often crouched near the hearth, hands folded, eyes following boots and belts with learned silence. Her name, whispered in the quarters, was Lila. On feast nights, Lila served cider. That evening, she moved between tables like a ghost, refilling goblets for men who called her Little Miss and smirked. But when the fire began in the study, she froze. Not in fear, in recognition. The air had shifted. Something was coming. She felt it in her chest. She slipped from the kitchen while the guests rushed to the carriages. She ran, but not far enough. Mason had limped back from the river, bleeding, cracked, but alive. His face was smeared with mud, shirt torn, pistol gone. He caught Lila behind the barn, dragged her by the hair into shadows. You know who, he spat. You know what she done. Lila didn't scream. She didn't plead, just stared. Mason raised his hand, then stopped. Clara stepped behind him. The axe was clean now, washed in river water and smoke. I missed one, she said. He turned, too slow. The axe struck his spine. He dropped like a stone, mouth open, twitching. Clara raised it again, brought it down, once, twice, until the twitching stopped. Lila watched, hands over her ears. Clara breathed hard, then knelt beside her. Can you walk? Lila nodded. Clara unwrapped a piece of cloth from her waistband, not for wounds, but for memory. A paper, old, creased, pulled from Hartwell's drawer 2 weeks earlier. A list of shipments, names, sales, girls sold at 10, boys at 5, notes and margins, disobedient, 2 mouthy, bred once. One name, Josiah Reed, circled in red. She pressed it into Lila's palm. If I don't wake tomorrow, she said, take this south. Find the printers. They'll know. Lila didn't speak, just closed her fingers around the paper like it was fire. Clara looked at her again. Really looked. Not a servant. Not a child. A witness. Not one meant to watch, but to carry. Remember what you saw, she whispered. Lila nodded, and then she was gone, into the smoke, into the trees, feet soft on frost. Clara turned back toward the big house. She did not expect sunrise, but she would wait for it. In the quarters, some stirred. Whispers moved like wind through rafters. A bell had rung. Fire had danced. Overseers were missing. The big house smoked like a punished altar. The children huddled in the smokehouse. The elders held hands, eyes wide. Some wept. Some prayed. They did not speak Clara's name. They didn't have to. She was walking through the yard now, her apron stained, her hands bare. No axe, just ash on her palms. She went to the master's table, still set for a feast. She sat, alone, and waited. The constables arrived before dawn. A neighbor had seen the fire. By the time they reached Magnolia Bend, the house was mostly ash. The study had collapsed. The barn smoldered. Blood darkened the dock. Clara did not hide. She rose when they called, stepped forward with empty hands. They bound her wrists. She didn't resist. The trial in Charleston lasted 2 days. No lawyer, no defense, just accusations, shouted like gospel. She had murdered 5 white men. She had burned a house of God-fearing honor. She had defied her place. Gallows, no mercy. But somewhere south, in Savannah, a paper arrived. No name on the envelope. No return. Inside, a list, faint ink, blood on one corner. An editor read it, blinked, read again, then ran it. Ledgers of death, the crimes of Edmund Hartwell. Names, prices, children, sales, and a name scrawled at the bottom. Clara, she remembered. The press caught fire. Pamphlets spread. Some denied it. Some wept, but all remembered. On the morning of her execution, Clara stood barefoot. The sky hung low. The gallows creaked. She looked at the priest. He asked, "Any last word?" She said nothing, but the wind carried smoke. And in the crowd, a girl stood with paper in her hand. Lila, eyes steady, not crying, watching. That day, Clara's body swung, but her story did not hang. It ran, through presses, through whispers, through generations, because someone remembered, someone carried. And memory, unlike name, does not burn. By the time the sun broke over Charleston's rooftops, the ash of Magnolia Bend had already cooled. Smoke curled like dying scripture above the chimneys. What had once been a house of hymnals and wine now stood gutted, soaked in river fog and justice. Clara did not run. She was found seated at the long table in the dining hall, her hands folded, palms dark with soot. Dishes still rested where guests had fled. Roasted duck turned cold. Candles had melted down to twisted wicks. Her eyes held no fear, only silence. The constables entered with rifles drawn. 4 of them, all pale, all trembling. One whispered, "That's her." Another crossed himself. "Stand," they barked. She rose. They bound her wrists with cords still slick from river mist. Led her barefoot across the yard. The axe had been left behind. She didn't look for it. Children watched from the edge of the quarters. Elders stood in doorways, heads bowed. No one spoke, but every eye followed her, not in mourning, in memory. The road to Charleston was long. The cart rattled with every bump, echoing the rhythm of chains. Clara sat on the floorboards, back against the rails. Her dress was torn, but her spine remained straight. They did not beat her. They did not touch her. Perhaps they feared the blood still on her. Perhaps they knew some acts cannot be punished, only marked. She reached the city at midday. The streets buzzed with market noise, but quieted as the cart passed. Whispers clung to her name. In the court, she was tried not as a woman, but as a symbol, a disruption, a correction to the order of things. The courtroom smelled of wax, ink, and fear. The judge wore black. The jury all wore cotton. The gallery filled with white faces hungry for spectacle. No one asked why. They only asked how. How did she do it? How many? Who helped her? They did not ask about Josiah. They did not speak of the names burned in Hartwell's ledgers. They read charges like sermons. Arson, murder, rebellion. The prosecutor's voice boomed. She stood over the body of her master and smiled. Clara did not speak. They asked for a confession. She offered none. They asked for repentance. She blinked. On the second day, a boy burst into the courtroom, breathless, mud on his shoes, ink on his palms. "Sir," he cried to the magistrate, "there's a broadsheet. Savannah." A paper was passed forward. Rough, smudged. The headline read, "A Plantation's Ledger, the Crimes of Edmund Hartwell." It listed names, ages, sales, tortures. At the bottom, scrawled in child hand, given by the one who did not run. Clara. The courtroom murmured. The judge silenced them. But the name had been said, and it did not vanish. The sentence came at dusk. Hanging. No appeal. No priest. The jail cell held nothing but straw and the scent of rust. A young guard brought her water. His hands trembled. He couldn't meet her eyes. She drank, then said, "You hear bells?" He frowned. "What bells?" She smiled. "Exactly." He left without a word. That night, someone slipped a note into her cell. No signature, just one line. "You were right to remember." She folded it, pressed it into the hem of her sleeve. The next morning, they dressed her in gray, led her through the streets. The crowd had grown. Some jeered, some wept. A woman in black dropped to her knees and whispered, "Thank you." Clara did not turn. The gallows stood in the square. Fresh wood, coarse rope. The executioner read the charges, asked for last words. She looked beyond the faces, beyond the rope, and said, "I am not the fire. I am the match." Then stepped forward. The body hung, but the name rose. Weeks later, Savannah papers printed a follow-up. Child witness carries ledger to press. Clara of Charleston named. Letters poured in. Pamphlets spread. Plantation owners denied. But families remembered. The method, the silence, the fire. In slave quarters across Georgia, stories changed. Children played near bell towers, whispering, "If the bell rings, run." Women grease hinges not for chores, but for history. Men checked powder, found wax. The legend moved, not with shouting, but with whisper. No stone marked her grave. The city refused to honor her. The plantation lands changed hands. New names, new masters. But the night of Christmas 1836 would not leave them. Fields grew quiet. Overseers turned their backs to doors. And every now and then, when the wind moved just right, someone would hear a bell, just once, and they would remember. They buried her outside the city, in earth no one claimed. No stone, no scripture, just a pit and a silence. But the silence did not last. In the quarters, her name was whispered at dusk. In kitchens, hinges were greased with care. Powder was checked twice. Bells were tested. Children learned that quiet could be a signal, that obedience was not always consent. They called her Clara of Charleston, not a slave, not a woman, a mark, a wound, a story that bled into wood, ash, and bone. She had no heirs, but her method birthed hundreds, not in rage, but in remembrance. They said she struck at midnight. They said the axe sang. They said the fire took only what was owed. What she did could not be undone. What she left behind could not be erased. Because memory does not burn. Because names can die, but truth does not forget.